What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 31 of Godzillatober, Shin Gojira. This movie's so weird. It's so different than all the other Godzilla movies. And part of that is because it is made by Hideaki Anno. Hideaki Anno is very, very famous in the anime world for making Evangelion, one of the most famous animes of all time. Let's go! Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I'm Jared Fearing. I'm a lifelong Godzilla fan and a big fan of Halloween. And nothing says Halloween like monster movies. So this year, for the month of October, we're going to review every single Godzilla movie, from Gojira all the way to Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire. So join me this month for a new video every single day and see if I go insane in the process. Let's get to it. Neon Genesis Evangelion came out in the 90s, and even though it's been a few years, they've done movies that are kind of like retellings of the series in movie length and split up over, I think there's 5 of them, but they're quite popular. Hideaki Anno being behind that makes him nothing short of a superstar in the anime world. There's been so much staying power for that franchise, and when I was in Japan last summer, there was Neon Genesis Evangelion stuff all over the place. I was actually shocked to see as much as I did because it is an older anime. But this isn't a video about Evangelion. Or is it? So having the creator Hideaki Anno behind a Godzilla movie is already like a recipe for something crazy, for sure. And the word Shin, it can mean a few different things in the Japanese language, like all of their language. There's multiple meanings for things depending on how they're arranged. But it can mean true or God, or in this case, it means new, like new Godzilla. Shin Gojira came out in Japan first, and it got huge acclaim right away. And that got it a limited release in North America, and I'm thankful to say that I was able to catch this one at the theaters when it came out. And even though this movie is very different than all the other Godzilla movies, I'm very happy I got to see it at the theater. There's a lot of moments in it that are visually so unique and stunning. It's really great in the visual department. In the story department, it's a lot of different things. It's a bit of an action movie. It's a bit of a movie about bureaucracy. It's a bit of a black comedy. The first like 30 minutes or so are almost like a horror movie the way that it's filmed. It's a real odd mishmash, and I personally love it. What they've come away with here is so unique and good. I really think it's a very successful movie for what it is. We've seen Godzilla have foes in the past that have transformations, like of course Mothra, but then there's other creatures like Biollante or Destroya that have several forms. But this is the first time in a movie that we've seen a Godzilla have multiple forms. We see his little tadpole phase, and then he essentially evolves to be standing upright, and then eventually we get to see the next phase of Godzilla that is completely different and much more menacing. It's a really cool approach that piggybacks on previous things in the franchise, and hell, even Pokemon if you want to believe it, the evolution thing. But it's a great gimmick to change things up. And it's really disturbing and unnerving to see like the almost goofy and dorky tadpole phase turn into a destructive monster that Godzilla is, that actually looks menacing and imposing. And they do like a really interesting thing with Godzilla's eyes here by just having them being like white with a dot and just like unblinking and staring, and it's like really creepy and great design, like really grotesque. This looks like a product of just like terrible radiation mutation. Like it looks gross. It's got the tail has like teeth and like other mouths kind of like developing in it. And yeah, we'll talk more about that in a bit. Anyway, Godzilla appears in the ocean and they have no idea what the hell it is. They think it's a volcano that's erupting. And then they determine that maybe it's an animal. And they're like, don't worry though, ocean creatures are not able to come up on land. They can't stand the pressure. And then, of course, it cuts to the next scene and Godzilla is on the land. They have a lot of really good comedic moments like that, where they're just like, there's no way this will happen. And then it cuts to the next scene immediately where that thing is happening. And so, like, there's a lot of, like, black comedy in this movie, where there's just, like, really funny scenarios like that actually hit their mark. There's some comedic scenes in previous Godzilla movies, but usually they're worth kind of a chuckle or whatever. They're like, yeah, it's fine. But comedy has never been like a major selling point of the Godzilla franchise. And that's okay. It's not particularly supposed to be. Humor here and there is okay, but it's not supposed to be like a laugh out loud franchise. This movie has some like really good, like biting, hilarious, scathing commentaries on bureaucracy, like I said, specifically government and its inability to act in the face of disaster. And a lot of this movie is reminiscent of the Fukushima disaster, and that was intentional in that there's just so much bureaucracy. They need to be immediately working. Once Godzilla attacks, they need to be getting people out of there. And they have a scene where they're going through, like, we don't even know which department should be handling this. And it's like, who cares? Get the word out, get people out of there. Godzilla is destroying everything. And so it's supposed to be a commentary about just like never-ending bureaucracy holding back government. And man, do they hit it. They hit it so well. That being said, the storyline about the ineffectiveness of government in the face of adversity, I really like it. I think it's really interesting, and I think that the dialogue is really sharply written and funny and serious, and like I think it works really well. But I know that this story is going to be very boring for some people. And this movie is a little less divisive than some of the other ones I've mentioned that are kind of split for the audience. I think this movie is generally regarded pretty well, critically and with the fans, but I definitely know there's a large section of the fans that just do not like Shin Godzilla, because a large part of it is this kind of like scathing commentary on government. As Godzilla continues to evolve and eventually attack, they try to mount more and more of a military offense against him, and it results in one of the coolest scenes in all of Godzilla franchise, which is when Godzilla actually breathes his atomic breath for the first time. It starts out as like a plume of smoke and then becomes flame that spreads out throughout Tokyo, and then eventually fire. And then in this movie specifically, and only in this movie, we see it go from being like an atomic nuclear fire breath into a condensed laser. And he just like wipes out most of Tokyo. And visually, it's so awesome. It's one of my favorite moments in the franchise history. And they attack Godzilla from above while he's doing this with some stealth bombers. And then he starts shooting the same like concentrated laser beam that's coming out of his mouth, starts shooting out of his back and tail and everything, just all over the place. Visually amazing. I love that scene. It's so cool. And I really think that even if you don't really dig the whole bureaucracy commentary, this movie's worth watching for that fire breath scene alone. It's so awesome. I really, really love that scene. This movie also focuses a lot on just the pride of Japanese people and Japan working as an independent country and being able to handle itself. There's several comments in this about like, maybe we can go to the Americans for help, or who can we ask, and la da 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 da. And in the end, it becomes Japan's own ingenuity to work together and to come up with its own solution that ends up defeating Godzilla. And I have no problem at all with this pro-Japan storyline, that it's trying to really underline that they can handle themselves. I have no problem with that at all. I think it's great because, you know, nothing wrong with having a pro-Japanese storyline in the most Japanese franchise in history. Godzilla is very arguably one of the biggest contributions Japan has had on a worldwide art scale. So I have no problem with any of that at all. I think that's awesome. There are a few scenes in this movie that are actually spoken in English, and those are like the most hilarious scenes for the same reasons I've mentioned in previous videos. I don't think that the Japanese filmmakers really realize the quality of like English delivery. And so the one girl who is basically, she's supposed to be Japanese American and she wants to run for president someday, she speaks in English in a few scenes, and her English is actually like not that good. So it's really funny that there's a scene where she's like, I want to be the youngest and also first female president, and it's just kind of like a hilarious scene because it's so ambitious and outlandish. But again, you know, who cares? This is a fantasy, like whatever. It is funny though. In the end, they kind of figure out that they can stop Godzilla with a blood coagulant, essentially freezing him in place, and they set up a trap using bullet train bombs, which is a really cool idea because bullet trains are so iconic of Japan and lots of fun to ride. The first time you see one coming, it's so surreal. But anyway, I love the solution that they come up with, and it's kind of like right in the nick of time. They're able to stop Godzilla, and the coagulant takes effect, and he stands up and essentially turns to stone. They even say in the movie that they're like, we're not sure how long it's gonna last. Like, maybe he's gonna break out and we're gonna have to deal with this again. And as the storyline kind of fades away and it's about to end, we see that Godzilla has like a little crack in his stone skin, and they see his tail actually looks like there's little like human-sized Godzilla kind of hybrid things that were forming at his tail, as if he was about to just like start spraying these things into society. And it's such a weird, ambiguous, and kind of cliffhanger ending. I know people have been talking about it and wanting more about that one aspect and like a sequel for years. And we've not got anything, and in a way I hope we never do, because this movie is so unique. I like that it ends on like a weirdo cliffhanger and giving you the thought of like, where could this possibly go? Not everything needs to be figured out. I'm kind of okay with it just ending there. And this movie actually has a lot of scenes that really highlight what it's like to look around the Tokyo landscape. A lot of other films like that take place in Tokyo, you're really only seeing like a portion that's been built in a model scale on a soundstage. You get to see a lot of the density of Tokyo here, because if you don't know, Tokyo is the biggest city on Earth. And amazing city. I had a great time there. I highly recommend it if you're in the area. The weirdo final Godzilla form is such a cool, odd design. I know a lot of people did not like it because he's got like little like T-Rex arms and he's just so ugly. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but for me, I love this design. I think it's really cool, and I really dig it. It's so different. They gave him like sharp, long teeth, those dumb eyes that don't blink and just are like really big cartoony eyes, the crazy tail with a mouth on it that shoots a laser. I really like this design. I really, really do. So for this film, I highly recommend it. I love Shin Gojira. That being said, I am also going to suggest that you see this movie in Japanese with English subtitles. The English dub is not nearly as good. So I do highly recommend it, but I'm also going to suggest that if you can handle watching the subtitled version, watch the subtitled version. In our next episode, we'll be talking about the first ever American version King Ghidorah. And that's right, it's Godzilla, King of the Monsters, the next installment in the Monsterverse. Can't wait to talk about it. As always, like, subscribe, comment down below, let me know what you think of Shin Gojira. I know it's a really divisive movie. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time for Godzilla, King of the Monsters.